Imagine a lot of people keeping their eyes on what's happening there. And to talk about what a few of these big decisions mean, I spoke earlier to the president of Euro-Pacific Capital, Peter Schiff. He's in Houston, Texas. Now, he told me why Greece has the right intentions in mind with this new plan. Take a look.
Well, it's the right direction. Maybe it's not the right order of magnitude. The problem is the austerity isn't austere enough. And, you know, if the Greek people are protesting, it shouldn't be at the austerity. It should be the profligacy of the Greek government that made the austerity necessary. And as I said earlier, it's going to get more austere before it's over. But yes, they are moving in the right direction, albeit much more slowly than they should be.
So you think further and larger cuts should have been made than were decided upon?
Oh, absolutely. And
Greece's parliament has approved fresh cutbacks worth more than €3 billion. It includes lowering the minimum wage and cutting pensions, as well as reductions in health and education spending. Massive protests against the measure are expected in Greece on Wednesday. Athens had to push through the new austerity legislation before the country could receive any of the cash from its second bailout package worth €130 billion. And after tense and prolonged discussions, Greece's rescue was agreed by Eurozone ministers last week. And to talk more on what's ahead for the indebted country, we're now joined live by Peter Schiff, CEO at the investment company Euro-Pacific Capital. Mr. Schiff, thank you very much indeed for your time. So Greece is clearing the last of the hurdles on its way to receiving the bailout cash. Aren't the cuts that have been introduced a necessary evil?
Well, they're not even evils. They're necessary. In fact, you talk about reducing the minimum wage. That's a good thing. In fact, it would be better if they abolished it completely. Wages obviously have to come down in Greece. They're too high. They're uncompetitive, particularly the wages for government workers, because the private sector can't afford these lavish pay packages. So, you know, you talk about austerity for who? Maybe for some of the government employees who have been living high on the hog, but it liberates the people because the Greeks are going to have to pay, those in the private sector are going to have to pay for those salaries. So these are positive reforms. They're steps in the right direction. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going far enough. I'd like to see more austerity.
Yeah, but 22% reduction in the minimum wage is going to be really tough and painful for ordinary Greeks. But without the bailout, the country would have gone bankrupt in March.
Well, no,
so would that be...
The minimum wage law is keeping a lot of Greek people unemployed because they're not worth the minimum wage. And
Varoufakis is an economics professor. By Monday, he could be Syriza's finance minister. What would a Syriza government do in the first 100 days?
Three main things. Firstly, we need to deal with the humanitarian crisis. It is preposterous that in 2015 we have people that had jobs and homes, and some of them had shops up until a couple of years ago, are now sleeping rough and are going to bed hungry at night. It is unacceptable that you have school kids doing their homework under candlelight because their electricity supply has been discontinued due to the fact that the state, in its infinite wisdom, decided to tax property through the electricity bill, for God's sakes. These are things that cost very little money and have a major symbolic, social and moral impact. So this is one of the three planks. The second thing we need to do in this country is to reform it deeply, and to reform it in a way that attacks what I call the triangle of sin. The triangle of sin in Greece comprises the procurement aspects of the state, where you have rent-seeking suppliers of the state charging an arm and a leg. A Greek motorway costs 3 times what it costs France to build a motorway. That is unacceptable. Secondly, the second part of the triangle is the bankrupt bankers who are exacting a major price. And thirdly, the mass media, which are perpetually bankrupt. And one should ask questions such as, so how can they manage to make ends meet when they've never had showed a profit in their history?
You can almost hear, though, Mr. Varoufakis, the European centre saying, here is a left-wing party meddling with freedom of speech.
The opposite. The opposite. We're absolutely committed to freedom of speech, and freedom of speech in Greece has been jeopardized by this unholy alliance between bankrupt bankers, developers, and media owners who become the voice of those who want to sponge and scrounge off everyone else's productive efforts.
And what will you do to the oligarchy concretely?
we are going to destroy the basis upon which they have built for decade after decade a system and network that viciously sucks the energy and the economic power from everybody else in society.
You're not just an economist, you know the history of this country. You know what happened last time somebody tried to take power from the Greek oligarchy.
The good fight has to be fought independently of costs.
And the cost might be that at some point a series of governments sees a challenge to democracy.
There is no alternative to remain steadfast in our opposition to those forces that are essentially depriving democracy of its substance. And let's go to the third plank. The third plank, of course, so humanitarian crisis, reforming Greece, attacking the oligarchy, doing away with tax immunity, because the problem is not so much tax evasion, it's tax immunity. And the third thing, of course, is renegotiating this loan agreement with our European partners, which has been detrimental to Europe as a whole.